Supposed trend in UFO activity is noticed as early as 1952 by Captain Edward Ruppelt, the first chief of Project Blue Book, the Air Force's official investigation of UFO reports. Ruppelt discovers what he calls an ominous correlation between UFO sightings and the locations of the nation's nuclear facilities.
If you're in the military and someone is displaying an interest in your strategic capabilities, it's an alarming situation. It raises national security questions.
A lot of investigation went on to determine what could happen. The Boeing company that was responsible for some of the equipment was involved. The U.S. government was involved in investigations.
The actual reason for so many missiles going down simultaneously was a big puzzle. They found absolutely that an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, may have fried the electronic workings in the missiles. However, there was no attempt whatsoever to relate the EMP, the pulse, to the presence of a UFO outside. In fact, the presence of the UFO out on the perimeter was dismissed as hearsay.
We have no hard evidence that there really were any UFOs there. Nobody got any clear photographs or videos or anything like that. We just have somebody's perception that they went out and they saw a light in the sky.
But the source of the EMP, a radiation wave that disturbs the function of electronic equipment, remains undetermined. And the government has never explained why so many missiles malfunctioned at the same time.
It's important to bear in mind that these missiles are designed to be independent systems. So if you do something to affect one missile, it won't affect all the other missiles because they're totally separate. So whatever caused this event was able to shut down a whole variety of missiles that were spread around a large geographical area around the launch control complex.
Fewer than 10 years later, 5 Strategic Air Command bases, including Malmstrom, are placed on high priority alert as a result of repeated reports of UFOs over nuclear weapons storage systems.
In 1975, right along the northern tier frontier, in many of the different Air Force bases, Falconbridge in Ontario, Canada, Loring Air Force Base in Maine, Woodsmith Air Force Base in Michigan, Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota, and Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, all experienced a series of unidentified objects. Some of these were explained away as helicopters, some of them were explained away as unidentified aircraft, some of them were called UFOs, but the general theme was that Air Force space was being violated at random by a series of aircraft that should not have been there.
At each of the bases, official logs record eyewitness accounts of the UFOs, and they are tracked by radar as well. In each case, the UFO reportedly hovers above the base, specifically the weapons storage area, for up to 40 minutes. All attempts to intercept or positively identify the UFO from the ground or with fighter jets in the air fail. The incursions are brought to the attention of the Commander-in-Chief of NORAD, the North American Air Defense Command. An investigation ensues.
The initial thinking behind the unidentified objects over the Air Force bases in the northern tier was thought to be potentially Russians or else some other enemy.
The only information we have is that the eyewitnesses described objects that behaved in a very unusual fashion. They glowed red, for example, and it doesn't sound like any technology that the Soviets had at that time.
Another theory is that the UFO incursions were a type of readiness self-test to check the security of the bases in the event of an attack. But if it was a test, the bases performed poorly.
The Air Force personnel were completely at sea as to what was happening. They were actually calling the law enforcement people in Great Falls, Montana for help because unidentified aircraft were buzzing them in missile-controlled silos. They had no idea what was going on.
Aside from acknowledging that unexplained events have occurred at the northern tier bases, the U.S. government remains characteristically silent on the question of whether American nuclear installments are indeed UFO hotspots.
To my knowledge, there's no published report explaining what happened. It's simply a mystery.
And as far as the government is concerned, it can remain a mystery. According to the Air Force fact sheet on UFOs published in 1996, no evidence has been presented to indicate that further investigation of UFOs by the Air Force or other government agency is warranted. But for some, the base sightings are not quite as open and shut a case as the government would have us believe.
We think the reason that the military tend to downplay this whole phenomenon is because the Department of Defense, by definition, needs to defend. And if theoretically there are objects that are able to violate United States airspace with impunity, that sets up a very big question mark about the efficiency and the abilities of the Department of Defense. But they are as bewildered and as puzzled and as intimidated as everybody else is.
Coming up, amazing photographs and multiple sightings in Gulf Breeze, Florida divide the UFO community. Is it a hotspot or an elaborate hoax? It's November 11th, 1987, and Ed Walters, a building contractor in Gulf Breeze, Florida, is about to experience the UFO phenomenon firsthand. As he would later recount, Walters looks up from his desk and sees what he believes to be a UFO. He grabs his Polaroid camera and ventures outside. Walters manages to snap a photo of what appears to be a glowing, dome-shaped bluish-gray craft hovering about 200 feet in the air. From 1987 to 1992, the small town of Gulf Breeze, Florida is famous for being an alleged UFO hotspot. Hundreds of eyewitnesses claim to see strange objects and unexplained lights in the sky. But Gulf Breeze is mired in controversy and allegations of a hoax. And Ed Walters stands at the center of the storm. On November 19th, 1987, 8 days after Ed Walters allegedly had his UFO encounter, the Gulf Breeze Sentinel publishes 2 of his 5 photographs. The next night, Walters claims to see another UFO and manages to take 4 more pictures, but decides not to publish them. Still, UFO fever has gripped Gulf Breeze, and by November 25th, reports of UFOs are pouring in.
Hotspots are very intriguing. These are places where there are multiple sightings. One person sees something, and a number of people see it shortly thereafter. The first person who notices it, the sense grants permission to the other people to make similar reports.
Over the course of the next 4 months, Walters takes more than 20 photographs of a strange vessel on more than 10 different occasions. He even shoots 1 minute and 38 seconds of video of a UFO sighting on December 28, 1987. Walters, who chooses to remain anonymous at first, soon becomes the central figure in the Gulf Breeze sightings. But he isn't the only one who is seeing strange things in the night sky.
Pensacola area, Gulf Breeze area, is not just Ed Walters. There were literally over 130 UFO incidents involving more than 200 witnesses in this area. And Ed Walters was only involved in 34 of those incidents.
But it is Walters whose photographs and claims attract the attention of MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, a nonprofit organization that studies UFO phenomena. In February 1988, MUFON provides Walters with a specially designed tamper-proof camera in order to authenticate his UFO experiences.
It was a multi-lens camera that could take more than one view at the same time. We bought new film, we put it in that camera, we had it certified as new. We had closed the camera, sealed it with wax. He was allowed to use the camera, and he did get some pictures. It was, again, opened then under security conditions. The films were developed, found things on the film, and there's no way he could have faked that one.
By the end of 1988, 7 different MUFON investigators have analyzed the evidence in Gulf Breeze. Meteorological and site survey analyses conclude that the photographs were likely to have been taken on the days and at the times that Walters alleges they were. Walters himself passes a battery of examinations, including 2 polygraph tests. MUFON, satisfied that Walters' claims are real, officially authenticates the Gulf Breeze sightings. But in 1990, new doubts surface regarding the Ed Walters case. First, a model that resembles the UFO in Walters' photographs is found in the attic of his former residence in Gulf Breeze. Then, in July of that year, a teenager named Tommy Smith alleges that he witnessed Ed Walters faking the UFO photos.
MUFON begins an investigation on a skeptical stance. It's like any private investigation or any police investigation. We go about it the same way. And like in any crime case, if more evidence comes along, we'll reopen a case. And we did reopen the case in Gulf Breeze because of Tommy Smith's allegation that Ed Walters had hoaxed it.
MUFON sends 2 new investigators, Rex and Carol Salisbury, to Gulf Breeze. The Salisbury's findings indicate that Ed Walters doctored the photographs, particularly one called Photo 19. That shows the reflection of a UFO on the surface of a road. The Salisburys believe that the photo was most likely made by using a small model and double exposure. But their conclusions are rejected by MUFON.
They believed that the other sightings at Gulf Breeze were real. They stated that in their reports. They just didn't believe Ed Walters.
Basically, MUFON fired them and sent somebody else in to authenticate, quote-unquote, the sighting.
The new investigator, named Gary Watson, questions the veracity of Tommy Smith's testimony. He also alleges that the model UFO found in the attic of Walters' former home was planted by someone who wanted to discredit Walters. Watson concludes that Ed Walters' photos and story are true. Despite the controversy over the Walters sightings, reports of a new UFO begin to emerge in Gulf Breeze. Instead of looking like ships or vessels, the new sightings are characterized differently.
There were various kinds of lights that were seen. Big red globes, little white lights, some lights that maneuvered, some hovered, some shot away, some just disappeared.
When you know it.
From 1990 through 1992, residents of Gulf Breeze see the strange lights so often that they give them a nickname, Bubba. They organize sky watches, and by 1992, there are 170 recorded UFO sightings of Bubba. But then, in 1992, the lights disappear as mysteriously as they had appeared 2 years earlier. The lights have never been explained, and the Ed Walters case still divides the UFO community. Although strange lights are still occasionally seen in Gulf Breeze, it is no longer considered to be a UFO hotspot.
Whatever supposedly was going on in Gulf Breeze, it's not going on anymore.
Oh, look at that. Huge. Look at that. Oh, it doubled. There it goes. It's doubling.
Up next, a Washington State man claims to be living in the middle of one of the world's major UFO hotspots. Winter 2002. Deep in the Mojave Desert, an alleged UFO hotspot, a flashing light beams a hopeful Morse-coded message to the stars. Hello, we are peaceful. Dr. Colm Kelleher and his colleagues at the National Institute of Discovery Science, or NIDS, are searching for signs of intelligent life in the universe. Armed with a light-gathering telescope, an electrospectrometer to analyze the light, and geomagnetic sensors to measure radio and microwave emissions, Dr. Kelleher hopes to amass physical data to prove, beyond a scientific doubt, that UFOs exist.
The primary focus is to try to get physical data with respect to UFOs, and I think only a person who's been working in this field for quite a while would appreciate the absolute difficulty in getting physical data on UFOs, because you never know when they're going to appear, you never know how long they're going to stay, and you never know why they would appear in a particular place.
NIDS operates a 24-hour hotline for UFO sightings. And although 95% of the accounts turn out to be IFOs, identified flying objects, like airplanes or weather balloons, there is still the 5% that defies explanation. And that 5% is what interests Dr. Kelleher.
If we got a series of reports, say in the last 5 or 6 months or even a year, from the same area, same location, different eyewitnesses that appeared to corroborate, we would take those reports seriously.
And one alleged hotspot that is raising some serious questions in the UFO community is the Yakima Mount Adams area in southeastern Washington state.
The Yakima Indian Reservation in Washington has the appearances of being a UFO hotspot for many years. UFOs have been reported from the fire towers, from rangers, from people camping, that sort of thing, over and over and over.
James Gilliland is the owner of the Sattva Sanctuary, a UFO-friendly spiritual retreat located nearby. He claims the whole area is rife with UFO activity.
The sanctuary here is located right at the base of Mount Adams, next to the Yakima Reservation, and it has over a 100-year history of recorded UFO activity. Well, I'd say this is probably one of the major hotspots in the world right now, because it's almost nightly that we see at least 1 or 2, if not 15 to 25 UFOs flying in the area.
Gilliland and fellow seekers gather regularly in the summer months for sky watches. They play music and meditate and wait patiently for UFOs to appear.
They're looking for people that are very spiritually aware, that have kind hearts, that love people, love humanity and the earth. And those are the ones that will be ambassadors to bring forward their message, because those people have risen to the occasion.
As Gilliland and others see it, the anomalous lights that appear above his property exhibit both intelligence and intent.
What these ships are doing, they're inquisitive, they're morphing, they're responding to lights, they're responding to the telepathic messages of those people on the ground.
Whoa! There we go. We got it. That was a good one.
We actually have some that morph from a round object to a triangle when we draw a big triangle in the sky, and then it goes back to a round object and then leaves again with multiple witnesses.
When you're talking about lights in the sky, it's very difficult to say what causes them. Are they natural phenomena or are they not? When they seem to fly into an area, stop and react to people yelling or to flashes of light or something else, what causes the reaction? Do natural phenomena do that?
One theory proposes that the lights in the sky are not doing anything, but the observer's eyes are.
Something called the autokinetic phenomenon. The eye literally cannot focus properly on a single bright point source of light against a dark background, and so it seems to bob around, move around, wiggle, zigzag. All these things are perfectly normal behavior, but it's the behavior of your eye. It's not the behavior of the object itself.
Trick of the eye or not, Some believe that Gilliland's role at the center of the UFO activity that surrounds his home is characteristic of all of the areas deemed a hotspot.
We've investigated in a couple of quote-unquote hotspots, and we are beginning to realize that any of the areas that we focus on usually has a single individual in that area who becomes a lightning rod for multiple reports from the community.
When you have a charismatic leader or somebody who's identified as an authority on UFOs, people will go where that leader says the UFOs are to be found, and there'll be more people watching, and you'll have more sightings reported in those areas. But it's a psychological, sociological kind of a thing. It's not related any way to what's actually up there.
The major portion of people that are coming here are more aligned to trying to understand the experience on a more spiritual nature, but we do have a lot of, we call them looky-loos, that are coming just to try to see one.
That there are strange, often inexplicable phenomena in the night sky is undeniable. But just what these phenomena are, and whether they tend to cluster in time and place to form UFO hotspots, is open to debate.
As far as the skeptics are concerned, on every level, you cannot instill want into another being. You can't get them to open their eyes or look at what's obvious. We showed them footage of